I'm David Volk, a voice of the resistance, albeit a strange and funny one. Today's post, I go in the way, way back machine to farewell, dear Vitamix. We've blended our last beverage together. It's been a tough couple of years. More than 1 million people died during the pandemic as we sat by and watched, praying it wouldn't be us. Crazies have taken over Congress and are trying to convince us that they're the same ones and we're all nuts. And not too long ago, there was the crushing news that mega retailer Bed Bath filed for bankruptcy, finally demonstrating why it had the word beyond in its name. Apparently, it wanted to be beyond the reach of some of its creditors. Still, I was able to weather all of those crises and more. But now, the worst has finally happened, and I just don't know if I can weather the storm. My Vitamix has given up the ghost. Go ahead and laugh if you will, but my Vitamix was more than just a blender. For more than 20 years, it was a constant in a world of change. It was a force of nature. It was a faithful servant. It crushed, juiced, pulverized, and pureed its way through the world without asking for much in return, other than a cleansing blend with warm soap and water. Gwyneth Paltrow, eat your heart out. Just like the demonstrators at Costco promised. I didn't get mine at Costco, though. I got mine the old-fashioned way. I earned it. I had spent a year putting in hard hours at a business that was run by a very demanding owner who was a bit, shall we say, eccentric, and not in a pleasant way. I had to interview difficult advertisers and write gushing things about them, even if they were buttheads. I was called on to edit pieces from expert columnists who were strangers to both punctuation and the paragraph format, and I also had to write atmospheric Q&A pieces about well-known personages within the industry without ever actually meeting said people in person. Although, to be fair, Julia Child did invite me over for lunch during a phone interview, but she lived in Boston and I was in Seattle at the time. Because the publication covered a part of the food industry, at the end of the year I worked there, we were all rewarded with Bun coffee makers, KitchenAid mixers, and Vitamix blenders. The coffee maker is long gone because I was never that big a coffee fan, unless it's adulterated with all kinds of sugary stuff. I was the only man who ever came to a marriage with a KitchenAid, an unused one at that. But because my wife already had one before we were married, it was soon relegated to being the kosher for Passover mixer, which still works, but is only used 8 days out of every year. But the Vitamix, it was special. It was a workhorse. And then, one day, the motor just started slowing. It bogged down on things it used to chop right on through, but that was fine. I wasn't in a rush. I was happy to baby it until my wife needed to make a dish quickly, and it wasn't up to the task. It was then that I learned denial is not a river in Egypt. It is the refusal to accept a basic fact. And the basic fact was, it wasn't keeping up. I kept it with us as long as I could, but alas, it is time to say goodbye. In honor of its departure, I'll use this moment to recall some of my favorite things it ever made. Late night fraps, 1. I may not like coffee by itself, but if you tart it up with lots of sugar and flavoring, I'm all for it. As I see it, coffee is just a caffeine delivery system anyway, and it was never more important than at 2 a.m. when I was up late working on chapters in The Cheap Bastard's Guide to Seattle, or when I was on a tight deadline. 2. Smoothies. They were a great fast breakfast on my way out the door to catch the bus for the job at the magazine. 3. Blender pancakes. Before I had kids, I didn't even know this was a thing. Once I had kids and had to make a fast breakfast on Sunday mornings, blender pancake recipes were a gift from heaven. Just throw all the ingredients in and blend instead of taking finicky steps to combine the dry ingredients and then the wet ingredients and putting them all together. Just mash the button, but don't forget to put the lid on first. Trust me on this. 4. Soups. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? The metal from the friction of the blades turning quickly heats it up. Something like that. I don't know. Perhaps it's a laser thing. I don't know. All I know is that I don't have to transfer the mix into a pot to heat it once it's done. It also makes a killer gazpacho. 5. It made a side dish of hummus in nothing flat for your favorite flatbread. A side of hummus. I wonder, if you made that and served it as an appetizer at a party, would you be guilty of hummus side? Number 6, ice cream. If you believe the folks at Costco, you can make ice cream out of just about anything with a Vitamix. You know, chocolate syrup, ice, turbinado sugar, spinach, an old sock. 7, blended adult beverages. Because when it comes right down to it, after you've spent all day making all those things, it'll be about time for an adult beverage. And As David Letterman himself once said, there's not a man, woman, or child alive today that doesn't love a tasty beverage. And please, please, don't serve your children adult beverages, though. They're for adults. I've been David Volk, a voice of the resistance, albeit a strange and funny one.